Okay, as part of this Le Corbusier Festival on this day of October 7th, 2023, one day after the birthday of Le Corbusier, let's talk about Le Corbusier in Paris, where he built a number of buildings and where he lived and worked. The name of his studio was called Atelier 35 Rue de Sèvres. It was a corridor of a former monastery, if I remember correctly. And this is a picture which I showed in the presentation earlier with a few recognizable people here. You know, on the right, of course, Le Corbusier, in the middle, B.V. Doshi, and then on the left, Yanis Xenakis. And I can only regret that I do not know the names of the other architects and maybe an engineer or two. Anyway, this was the team of Le Corbusier at the time when this picture was taken within Atelier 35 Rue de Sèvres in Paris. The private office of Le Corbusier was at the end of this corridor on the right, a little room, 223. I have some troubles to remember exactly the numbers. Well, based on his theory, 223, I think 2 meters 23 by 2 meters 23, and the third dimension also 2 meters something, not 23, but close to it. So essentially, the room was as big as a bathroom. And I read that he didn't have windows, and that at one time, apparently, he even painted the walls in black. Can you imagine? That was the private office of Le Corbusier in Paris. A room with or without black walls, but without windows, as small as a bathroom. Was he a masochist? Perhaps yes. Although in this picture, you know, you wonder who is the masochist and who is the sadist. The workers work hard, and the man who never studied architecture formally is looking at them working very hard. Yeah, life can be unjust often, or unjust. The only one who looks towards the photographer, I don't know if you know, but he considered photographers terrorists because probably being a famous man, they terrorize him to pose for some pictures. And now he looks towards the terrorist while the others are busy working. So he's here on Rue de Sèvres, 35 in Paris, his office. Here he is with two of his collaborators. Here he is with Doshi in a restaurant, I guess. I wonder, did Doshi think at that time, as a young man he was, that later in his life he would receive the Pritzker Prize? Probably not. A very good architect himself and a very inspiring force in the field of architecture, art, culture, ideas, and so on. Another picture of Rue de Sèvres, 35, 35. And this was his office, his little office. I don't even know. I mean, it seems to be, no, but I read these were the dimensions of his office. This was the office of Le Corbusier. You know, most students today have bigger spaces, bigger rooms. So I guess, you know, it doesn't really matter so much, you know, what kind of space you have at your disposal. This man was not afraid even of poverty. I mean, look there. You know, it's you know, it's almost like a tomb, especially if all the walls were painted in black. Now here we see some artworks, but essentially is a room, you know, without glory. Particularly if we think that indeed it has no windows. It's okay. You can be Le Corbusier in the smallest of rooms. Now, the house and the studio of the painter Ozenfant, he was friends with, they even published a book together. The building still exists. So again, in this presentation, I only show the Parisian works of Le Corbusier and his office on 35 Rue de Sèvres. This is how the building looks like now. When it was built, there were some skylights at the top, but I see they seem to have eliminated the skylights in order to create a terrace jardin there. It's a nice street with a nice building with an unbelievable studio. If you consider that light, there used to be light also coming from the roof. Here, maybe that glass roof was eliminated, maybe. Anyway, so this is the house and the studio of Ozenfant, a painter and a friend of Le Corbusier, and a collaborator of Le Corbusier. You see, this is how the building looked like when it was built, with these skylights here. So there was natural light coming also from the top, but the skylights disappeared later. I don't know when. This is how Le Corbusier planned the building. Not bad. Who taught architecture, this man? Nobody. I mean, I guess he was born an architect, and then through study, education, reading, traveling, he learned architecture by himself. He became what he already was, an architect. He didn't need, diplomas and all that, work done for others in order to please others. He pleased himself, but with suffering as well. Impossible otherwise, it seems, on this earth. So I guess we have to choose between following God or following the professors. He chose to follow God, even though he was not quite a believer, as far as I can tell. That's why I said in the previous presentation, I think he was rather an atheist, but he believed in his conscience and in his talent and in his intelligence and in his intuitions and in his imagination and in art and in architecture. Cité de Refuge. This is actually a back view of the building. I visited it, l'Armée du Salut, that's how it is called. And this is the front view. And it's a building that if you would build today, you would stand out from the crowd, but it was not built today. Also, I like the social function of the building. So, l'Armée du Salut, Cité de Refuge, Le Corbusier. I was only able to enter the first floor. They wouldn't allow us. I was with some students, wouldn't allow us to go upstairs. In a way, some kind of a hotel for the poor. Yeah, why not? Why shouldn't the poor also enjoy, primary colors, for example, and a building by Le Corbusier? Paris. Paris. And here they are, the students visiting the building by Le Corbusier. It was built, it was inaugurated in 1933, so, well before the Second World War. but the modernity of the building still stands out. Now, Le Corbusier's Paris home, his own home. We saw a sketch on yellow tracing paper, and he built it. He lived on the top floor here. Now I don't know if maybe both floors belong to Le Corbusier. You know, I said it some other time that at La Tourette, the monastery La Tourette, which I visited and I spent a night there, I was very impressed by the bathroom, the public bathroom. I am never impressed by bathrooms, but there I was very impressed because it was very unimpressive. It was very, like here, very, in a way, a very sincere bathroom with everything exposed, the ducts, they were not hidden. And, even, like he leaves pieces like this. He did the same at Le Cabanon. He would just take them out of the conventional bathroom, and here there isn't even a door. There is no door. And then, yes, a nice space now for the artist. But when he lived and worked there, it looked. It was crowded with look at it, with art, with papers, with paintings, with also anachronistic funny chairs, kind of like his friend Picasso. Picasso had all the money in the world, but he had broken chairs in his castle. Le Corbusier, he designed furniture. Do you see any art furniture designed by himself in his studio? No. He maybe he even found on the street these chairs, just as Picasso did, because they were dreamers. They were not businessmen. They were not interested in showing off. They were creators. They were interested in the work, not in the chairs they displayed. Look here. What do you see? It's the working ambience, the working environment of a tumultuous creative force, and that's why he created, all kinds of paintings and papers and notes and some books here and there. Otherwise, yes, on the inferior level, I guess things were a little bit different, because maybe his wife took care of those spaces, or at least those. Now I don't know what is this. This is a projector or some kind of device to for who knows what kind of observations across the street. But sculptures and yes, fruitful disorder. Nice. Very nice. Also nice conditions of light. Now look at here, this bed here, being so tall. My God, my God. I don't know what to think about this bed. Imagine yourself falling from this bed. You could ruin your health significantly. Why would he place it so tall? I mean, such a height from the floor. By the way of this, I remember what Balzac wrote. Balzac, in some of his writings, was very concerned about, what a man should do not to be cheated on by his wife. So he had the opposite idea. I guess Le Corbusier didn't have this fear, but Balzac had it. He said, one should place the bed at a low height from the floor, so no possible hiding lover could find a hiding place under the bed. On the other hand, I mean, here you cannot hide, not because there is no space, but there is too much space under the bed. Really, I mean, was he a functionalist? Truly, why would he put the bed at such a height? Because you can't even sit comfortably on this bed. It's really a question I have. Maybe you can answer me here from the audience. Why would he elevate the bed so much? Uh, you can see no door at the bathroom. Uh, Hello, Monsieur Le Corbusier. Happy birthday for yesterday to you. Um, well, in Paris, he was living rather well. I don't know if Doshi saw his apartment in Paris to ask for a quick increase in his salary. Now, unfortunately, the apartment is vacated. The signs of life, when I'm sure it had when he was alive and his wife was alive, are not here any longer. So it's a deserted apartment. But this apartment is not small, compared with Le Cabanon. It's not small at all. Another bedroom here. Now the Swiss pavilion, also by Le Corbusier and also in Paris. Fondation Suisse et Fondation Danois. There is another building similar for the Brazilian. These buildings are built in close proximity. This is the pavillon suisse à la cité de la cité universitaire de Paris. Is the Swiss pavilion at the university city or Cité Universitaire of Paris, and Brazil also has a building by Le Corbusier, and we are going to see it too on the same campus. I'm not entirely seduced by these buildings where he tried to apply, rigorously I think he was trying to control his emotions through his modular and through his calculations. But maybe the fascination with Le Corbusier also comes from this duality. On one hand, tempestuous temperament, on the other hand, the need to control the temperament through rigor, through formulas, through numbers. So underneath the building, it looks luminous and clean, but I remember the l'unité d'habitation in Marseille, it was different. It wasn't so luminous, and it was rather ominous. This is for students. It's a dorm, actually. Interesting idea to advertise the interior of one room on the facade, the big facade, the side facade of the building. So this is the, for the Swiss at Cité Universitaire in Paris. And when you are in Paris, you can visit it, and maybe you should visit it, particularly since there is another one close to it built for Brazil. This one, Maison du Brazil. Unafraid to use rough stone, as you can see. Unafraid of color. So art does show up in his work sometimes. Exposed concrete. He wouldn't use plaster, no. This is a small auditorium for, conferences or, small groups of theater. maybe students in architecture. Stone on the floor, nothing less. I only hope he didn't torture the students with his own masochism. You know, I hope he provided also some chairs. But you saw at Le Cabanon, he did use this wooden box as a chair, even for himself, or especially for himself. We see the flag of Brazil. We see clearly the exposed concrete. We see primary colors, which in the case of building connected with Brazil seems to make even more sense. Plus the colors, the chosen colors seem to be the correct ones. Now Maison La Roche, where there is a foundation now in Paris. These are buildings that you know, they keep the modernism alive. So it's a historical modernism, but I think they have a freshness, a vision which is still contemporary. Is it a contextual architecture? Not really. I don't think Le Corbusier was, you know, trying to mimic too much interest or affection for the nearby buildings. A ramp within the building, within the main room. Maison La Roche. Now it's called Casa Genre. Genre being the first, I mean, the birth certificate family name. (1923, 1925), so it was built before Villa Savoye, which, as I mentioned earlier, to my surprise, I learned only today how to spell correctly, how to pronounce correctly. It's not Villa Savoye, it's Villa Savoye, apparently, based on that site, how to pronounce names correctly. Maison Planeix, this is a very interesting building, and it's very similar to a building by Adolf Loos. I like this building very much, more than many houses built by Le Corbusier. It's a smaller building. It's almost a square in the main elevation. I hope I have a view from, yeah. Here you see actually on the left, I mean, on the left of the diagonal of this almost square is the building by Le Corbusier, and on the right is the building by Adolf Loos. So really the two buildings are very, very similar. So this is Villa Planeix by Le Corbusier. Just a second, yes. I didn't check to see who built it first, Loos or Le Corbusier, but I imagine it doesn't really matter. At this level of architectural accomplishment, I don't think they, it might have been some kind of a coincidence, but I could also be wrong. Sometimes architects do find inspiration in other people's work, and Dan Coma can be a culprit in this respect, and he is not the only one. Anyway, Villa Planeix. I hope I pronounced correctly, Planeix. Strange name. Maybe this was the name of the family that commissioned Le Corbusier. It's not so big. It's actually a rather small building. It looks bigger in the pictures. I was a little bit surprised when I was there in Paris to see it. It's actually not so small. I don't know why. When I visited it, it seemed to me a little small, but when I see now, it's not so small. Anyway, it doesn't matter if it's small or big. This is Villa Planeix. I somehow like more the one by Adolf Loos. Roof terraces of the base Guy apartment in Paris. This is the only surrealist work by Le Corbusier. And it is surrealist through and through. It's a small work. You even wonder, why he did it so. But it seems he liked this kind of furniture, and look at that chimney. It's a very interesting work. Now, Villa Savoye, not Savoie, but Savoye. You know it. I won't insist. I would only say that I have some troubles with this villa. Imagine, I mean, this is the garage, right? This is the ground floor. Now imagine coming with a car in this narrow space between this wall and these columns after you drank some glasses of wine. Well, I think it would have been very easy to crash into one of these pillars, which are so fragile. I mean, to me, it's very strange what he did here, actually, to squeeze the car and also to maneuver it in order to turn its back and enter the garage, 2 or 3 cars here. I find it problematic, actually. I mean, the very idea to configure a famous building like this one, based practically on the driving of a certain car of certain dimensions, but the space is narrow. It is narrow. Even for a skillful driver, I think this homage to the car, because this curve on the ground floor is actually the curve used for cars to turn comfortably around the corner. Now, why would Le Corbusier, we know he liked cars, but to transform the car into some kind of a fetish in such a way, I find it a little bit problematic. Don't you think? I really think the ground floor of this very celebrated building is very problematic because of this, that he founded it being very concerned primarily with the car and the movement of the car. But even that movement, in my opinion, he didn't consider very carefully, because this space is narrow. So you come with the car from here, and then you squeeze yourself in between the walls and the columns in order to arrive here and then turn back and enter with the car like this. I think it shows rather a love-hate relationship with the car. On the other hand, the so-called plan libre, it might be some, free within the almost square. This is not a perfect square, it's an almost square. But the truth is, the building towards outside is anything but free. It's not free at all. It's actually a cage. Look at this. I mean, it's an enclosure. It's an enclosure. Inside, yes, there is some freedom and some viscerality, but outside, you cannot truly say that this is a free building, because, I mean, look at the plan. You know it, the plan. It's very strictly enclosed, the so-called freedom. So it's like having freedom or some freedom within a cage. Is it truly freedom? Why didn't he break this enclosure in some form? Just break it. I think it's the frame of his own dogma. And it's a paradox in a way, because this man created, but let's also remember Ronchamp. There is conflict at the southern wall. Here there is also conflict between the so-called viscerality and variety and complexity of the interior, but then towards the exterior, nothing Dionysian. It's only Apollo, and it is white, and it is not an accident that there is a contemporary artist who vandalized through Photoshop the elevations of this building. Well, he vandalized them because these placid elevations do seem to ask for some graffitis or some kind of a splashing of color of something to bring freedom outside of the enclosure as well. I'm very surprised that this building is actually so famous, because yes, the interior has, but look at the excessive whiteness, it's too much whiteness. And I don't think it's an accident that also the inhabitants of this house hated it. They couldn't live here. And now it's a museum. It's a museum, it's visited by the students of architecture. But yes, it is interesting inside, but it's still a cold building. I was inside this building, and look at the perimeter. But the perimeter to me doesn't show freedom at all. And this homage to the car, I find very problematic. I am sorry. I mean, I wouldn't like to be that driver, to very carefully to navigate on that narrow space in order not to crash into one of these pilotis. I mean, I'm not a psychoanalyst, but I feel like psychoanalyzing Le Corbusier through this building. Something is not right. The very idea to start building a house from a car, because the ground floor is, that's where it starts from. That curvature is the radius necessary for a car to turn around. But excuse me, Monsieur Le Corbusier, with all affection and respect, shouldn't a house be something else? I mean, why give so much importance to the car on the entrance level of the house? And even the car is not so comfortable. I mean, look, this is a narrow space, isn't it? Imagine yourself driving even with a small car, a small Fiat. But if you have a larger car, forget it. It's a test in endurance. Anyway, that's what I think. I do find it strange because I think he could have done better. But what I really find strange is that this building is the most worshipped building by Le Corbusier, just as the Falling Water is by Frank Lloyd Wright. But I think this building deserves some criticism, and I welcome actually the criticism of Bernard Tschumi, who wrote when he was young that showing a picture of this building when it functioned like some kind of a storage, and it was abandoned and vandalized. And Bernard Tschumi said the most architectural thing about this building is the state of decay it finds itself in. I think he was correct, Bernard Tschumi, and he probably also admires Le Corbusier. But this building, I personally think is overrated. It's a monument to what? Because you can't even live in this building, and it's not an accident. It's a museum, and it's not an accident that the Savoye family didn't live here. But architects like it, and students like it, and schools of architecture like it. Why? Because this is actually almost an image of what is happening in a school of architecture. You are told you are in a school of architecture, you have freedom, be creative, Be creative while around the building is the strong enclosure of a strong geometry, which doesn't really, I mean, this is a free facade. Let's be serious. If it was free, why didn't it manifest its freedom? Where is the freedom on these facades? Because I don't see it. I don't see any freedom really in the enclosure. I don't. That's why that graphic artist who splashed it in Photoshop in alarming ways. And too much wideness, for God's sake. You know, life is not like this. Yeah, I think I wrote this, or somebody wrote, towards a car architecture, Le Corbusier. This is a car architecture because of the insidious presence from the very beginning of the making of this building. It is a car architecture. And I think we had enough car architectures in the world. Let's get rid of the cars, really, if we still want to breathe some acceptable air on this earth. Another car architecture, probably. No, it's the same. Villa Savoye. I think it's overrated. Sorry for being subjective. I'm sure I'm not the only one who, you know, you envision a building like a temple. But can you imagine the Greeks? Let's say just the Greeks envisioning the temple based on the radius necessary for a car to turn to the left and to the right. God, of course, they didn't have cars at that time, but they had chariots. Anyway, something is wrong here. Villa Savoye, abandoned. That's how it looked like when Bernard Tschumi said that the most architectural thing about this building is the state of decay it finds itself in, or it found itself in. Look at this. I actually like it more like this. With signs of life. This is Villa Savoye. There's some life in it. A cat there, and you know, that's how it looked like before André Malraux signed the decree to save it as a monument historique. It is a monument historique, but yeah, that's how it looked like for a number of years after the war. And now this is the artist that felt impelled to destroy it through Photoshop. Xavier, I don't know if he was French, he's French, Delory. Anyway, you pronounce his name, Xavier Delory. And that's what he did. Now, again, why did this artist have a need to do this? Because he felt what I feel and other people feel, that this building actually is not free. The perimeter is a rather strict enclosure. And he tried to give troubles to that strict enclosure through his graphic interventions. Or here, isn't it better? I think it's better. It's still not destroyed enough, but I mean, personally, I would have cut down a few, chopped off a few pilotis. You know, it's just something is wrong here. And I am tempted to think that Dr. Freud is necessary to solve this mystery. Again, the same artist. I wonder what Le Corbusier would have thought if he saw these Photoshops, these Photoshop interventions by this artist. I truly wonder. But I think it's better than the whitey splendor. Now, even a black Villa Savoye was built in Canberra, in Australia. The architect Howard Raggart of the firm whatever designed the building for whatever controversy surrounds this building, with the claim that part of the rear of the building is a copy of pioneer architect Le Corbusier 1920s Villa Savoye. Of course it is. Look at this. I mean, there is no question about it. The black Villa Savoye, even this architect felt a need to do some changes here, you know, to the building, to the beloved mentoring building. So he made it in black, the black Villa Savoye with a reddish door. Villa Savoye sinking. Why would someone think about Villa Savoye sinking? Well, here it is. This building is infuriating because to many people, it seems, because something is wrong about it. The owners didn't want to live there. The Spanish or French artist disfigured it with Photoshop. Someone else thought of this, I don't know who. Then the Australian architect made a black version of it. Look at this, Villa Savoye. This is in Denmark, because we see here the buildings of Mr. Larsen, the waving buildings. Yes, in Denmark, someone is drowning the building by Le Corbusier. Anyway, make buildings that are alive, that do not invite such irreverentious gestures, please. Because life doesn't care about white statements, you know. Life is life. It needs breathing space. It needs color. It needs distortions. It needs imperfections. Here is the statement of the great architect. And he was a great architect, but I think he made a mistake here. That's why all these people react to it. Yes, this is in Denmark. It looks good, actually, the sinking. That was it. So if you want, let's talk a little bit.